We will now be having the next live discussion dealing with cybercrime cartel. Introducing our moderator and Vice President of ISOG, Mr. Chito Jacinto. Here with him are the panelists. We have Mr. Fredric Ong, a Systems Engineer from Fortinet, Ms. Madeline Lee, the Regional Sales Director of Southeast Asia from Entrust, Ms. Jennifer Tan, the Country Manager of Gigamon Philippines, Mr. Alvin Tan, the Regional Vice President of Tanium, and Mr. Jericho Fiecas, Technical Lead at Westcon, representing F5.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, from what I've heard at this point in time, we can say that it is not necessarily the case wherein the groups actually band together because they already have access to each other's tools that they can use for their own nefarious activities, right? Okay, well, now let's move on to the next question. I'd like to ask this particular question. At this point in time, how does organized cybercrime affect our lifestyle? Not just us as professionals, but people, members of our families, people at their homes, and wherever else. So how does organized cybercrime affect our lifestyle in this new cyber norm? Let's start with the last person who gave me his input. Fredric, can you be the first one to share your thoughts?
Sure, Chito. Actually, it affects us more than we know because for a fact that everything right now is already online. Our bank accounts, our personal information, our emails, all of these things are actually integral or already a very important part of our lives, which if someone gets hold of this or someone gets access to this, it will really affect our reputation, our financial status. For example, to give you an example, recently since the pandemic, we have heard of news of there are a lot of financial fraud pertaining to unauthorized withdrawal from bank account. Yeah, it could start from a phishing email, could start from maybe someone telling you to upgrade your SIM card. No, they give you a supposed to be 5G fake SIM, and then you use that. You give to that person your original SIM. You thought this is a legit guy from your telco. And this is how the 2FA of the bank sends that the one-time password, right? If you're, for example, you want to withdraw something, an amount from your account. So this is the way they do. And if we got compromised, there are a lot of incidents where the entire bank account was siphoned of the money. So just imagine that your hard-earned money, all of them withdrawn by the attacker. So this is really a very significant threat that cannot be ignored. So I would suggest on a personal level, everyone to practice good IT security hygiene, like enabling two-factor authentication as much as possible, enforce password complexity, and other hygiene practices that will make it harder for the attackers to get your information and gain access to your accounts.
Okay, Jennifer, your thoughts. How does it affect, or how does organized cybercrime affect the lifestyle that we're living nowadays?
Yeah, well, Sir Chito, no, I always hear that yung sinasabi nga nila, that data has become the new oil, no? What they call the so-called currency in today's technology-driven era, where we are now. And a lot of researches, a lot of incidents that have happened in the past, they're continuously happening. There's a realization that how profitable for the bad guys of that now that data can be seen, everywhere. However, I think lalo na at this point in time that there's the proliferation of the pandemic, and that we cannot move along and do our physical stuff like what we used to do before. And when the pandemic hit us, most of us were caught unguarded and unprepared for such kind of threats. No, I'm not saying that everyone. I mean, some organizations have already prepared for this kind of uncertainty. However, there are some that there was like a sudden feeling of uncertainty and doubts, of whether their organization can protect their own assets. And there had been like a sudden dichotomy now of an attacker versus a defender, right? So because of this ambiguity caused by the new norm, what do I mean when I say a dichotomy of these two? No, a defender being unfamiliar with the techniques used by the attacker is likely to do poor, right, in keeping their job or keeping the experienced attacker out, right? And in the same manner, an attacker unfamiliar with, say, the target's defensive capabilities will soon be detected. No, I always love talking about the analogy of war. No, it's in war, like in the previous times, we always have these terms, friction and fog, right? So friction being the impediments there is in a war that you have to act tactically, no? Like for example, pain and death, right? But there's also what we call the fog which is about the ambiguity, something that is unforeseen, but maybe something that you can plan ahead, plan strategically. That's now where the importance of pervasive is, no? Like every time that I speak about, sometimes we always, most of the times we hear about that we cannot protect what we cannot see. And actually that at this point in time, since we are caught unguarded, there are times that we cannot see the totality of things. And that makes us ambiguous, no, of something that we need to protect. So that's one. And another thing, like what I mentioned, no, being tactical and strategic of approach of things is another thing, which just should be considered.
Okay, thank you. I like that. I love that analogy about war and how things actually need to be clear. We need to clear the fog for us to be able to know what's going on. Thank you for that, Jennifer. Now let's move on. I'd like to ask Alvin, your thoughts?
Sure, thanks. Maybe I should define the new cyber norm first. So I guess the new cyber norm over the last 12 months, 18 months, we are really talking about being hit by the pandemic. And I think two things happen in that pandemic. The first one is that if organizations already embrace IT, right, they would then have already have computers in the office. And what happened during this new cyber norm is that those computers have gone home. There's a second category. The second category is where these organizations were never digitalized to start with, and they had to quickly pivot to be digital in order to make ends meet and to continue making a living for themselves. So we see that in maybe food, the restaurants have to quickly digitalize and create a delivery menu so that people can order online and still get delivered. And that way the restaurant can continue to function as a restaurant. So there are two things that happen in this new cyber norm. So how does organized cybercrime affect that? I would say the joke that was running over the last 18 months is that, the chief digital transformation officer is actually COVID. It's not the person in my office, right? It's COVID. COVID caused my whole organization to do a digital transformation. And that joke actually has a lot of reality in it, in that people had to pivot to make a living. And as a result, the attack surface, as we know it, has increased tremendously. So when it increased tremendously, then for sure, organized cybercrime will affect us. Now, the question I guess we should be asking ourselves in this new norm is how much can we trust the IT system that was cobbled together in a very quick space of time? I mean, we asked a lot about the vaccines that came out. Can we trust the vaccines to go into our arms? We should ask the same about the IT systems. Can we trust that whatever it says is the truth, both in terms of the emails that you receive, as well as, even the restaurants that you're going to order your meal? Are they scraping your address? And by the way, they'll get your address, they'll get your phone number, and maybe your identity number as well. So the question of trust, I guess, is what will affect our lifestyle in the new cyber norm.
Okay, I like that. I like that joke actually. But that joke actually, as you mentioned, has some valid truths to it, because that is indeed what has happened. And thank you for sharing that with us. At least it validated my own ideas, my own thoughts. that it's not really people that actually introduced the changes that we're going through right now, but actually it was the pandemic. Okay, thank you very much, Alvin. I'd like to go to Madeline. Madeline, what are your thoughts on this matter? How does it affect our lifestyles nowadays from your own point of view?
Yeah, I echo what everyone says. I think one of the factor is also, the serious financial losses. But at the same time, it's also the theft of intellectual properties. But at the same time, it's also the loss of consumer confidence and trust. So, for example, if I were to do a banking and my data got leaked or my banking information got hacked, the loss of my confidence towards that entity would be highly impacted. So I think, and if you look at the overall impact of cyber attacks, it's not just looking from a personal point of view, but at the end of the day, if you look at the nation's economic point of view, it actually also erodes the public confidence when you're looking at the critical services. Like what everyone says, because of COVID, everything is moving towards online, and what are the kinds of data that you should trust, and what are the kinds of data that you're worried that will be leaked. So I think it overall cyber attacks actually cause a lot of disruption nationwide and globally as well. And I think the fact that because of the COVID pandemic and everybody is working from home, it obviously impacts us from a personal point of view. But I would say beyond the personal point of view, if you look at nationwide or consumers' point of view, that is also very, very highly impacted as well.
Okay, so that means at this point in time, it's everybody. What everybody else has said. It's actually a consolidation of all that's happening, not just because of the pandemic, but also because of the lifestyles, the individual approaches, or the results of what we try to do in order to protect ourselves as well. Right, Madeline?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you very much, Madeline. I'll move on now. Jericho, can you share with us what your ideas are insofar as the effects of organized crime, cybercrime has on the lifestyle that we now lead?
Actually, since as mentioned by Madeline, we don't we experience that attack, someone get fraud, but actually we don't need to actually experience it firsthand. Definitely, we know someone on our first level, someone's get already being tricked, or it's already they being compromised, or they lost something from a financial transaction. So it affects on our behavior, on how we do our cyber activity or any virtual activities what we do. It, it it two things. It makes us vigilant on anything we do. Uh, is this the link? Is this a website I'm trying to access? But at the same time, it also makes us a paranoid that I might fail, or I might miss someone, I might miss something. That this I might do something that later on it will be lead to a compromised asset, or I mean leads to a compromised transaction. So that thinking will always be part of our behavior now, because of this cyber organization, or this cybercrime organization that we know they are really there. They're just waiting for someone to mess up things, and it's just like they're putting up traps, and so that falls on all of us that to be vigilant. But as a result, we also become a paranoid. So it's a paranoid in how we do transact our virtual activities, di ba? So I think that's how this organization are really affects on the lifestyle. It really affects in terms of our normal user on how they behave. But the important part is at least they are aware that they are cyber. These organizations are out there, right?
Okay, thank you. Because we're quite sure that they're out there. We've seen them
We've seen them.
attacked other people that we know of, even
Ah.
personally, for that matter. Okay, allow me to move on to the next question. Can you give me a short statement, probably, on what the current situation is in the Philippines, or maybe even in the region, neighboring countries, or Southeast Asia, or Asia for that matter, relative to organized crime? Let's probably start off with Alvin. Alvin, yes, please.
Yeah, thanks. In my opinion, there's a there's a democratization of both cybersecurity as well as cybercrime worldwide, because the whole world went into lockdown, right? The whole world went home to work.
Yes.
Therefore, if you're an attacker, what would you do? You would find the lowest hanging fruit. And the lowest hanging fruit is whoever has just transformed. Of course, you will go after the heavyweights, which tends to be the nation state, the military, government, and banks, to try to attack. You get the most bite, right? Financial gains, as well as in terms of feather in the cap of being able to successfully attack. Those are the high stakes, I would say. But you would also find that, hey, actually I could attack elsewhere and just be equally successful. So to give an example, we have seen a spate of supply chain attacks. By the way, supply chain attacks is not new. It started way back 40 years ago, when the Linux writer, one of the co-authors of Linux, actually wrote a backdoor into the Linux such that he could log in without having any logins. And then he actually did a compiler that compiled that code into the Linux code, so that his code itself is hidden in the compiler. So backdoors have existed for 40 over years. Right now, if I want to attack nation states, which are difficult, but then I could potentially get to them through a supply chain. And that's what we saw at the end of last year and at the start of this year, a lot of supply chain attacks hitting into the upper echelons of the nations and of financial services and all the high stake organizations. So that's something that we see a lot. So does that then, if we translate it back to the Philippines or to neighboring countries, will that apply? Yeah, of course it will apply. The question, I guess, would be, where does Philippines rank in a whole worldwide scheme of things in terms of being a viable or attractive target? And as a result of that, as attacks become successful elsewhere in the world, we learn about their TTPs, and we learn about how to defend it better. And that's the democratization of the defense side of things, where everybody will get a leg up because of successful attacks elsewhere, that we could potentially protect ourselves better.
Okay, thank you very much, Alvin. Let me move on to Fredric.
Yes, Chito. In my opinion, I think for the Philippines, with relation to the other countries, what we can see here in terms of the threats and attack, most of them are what we see phishing, something like small group or individual trying to target a particular user or a group of user in general, using various techniques like in email, in SMS. So these are the types of the methods that they do. Well, if we're going to compare it to other countries, what we can see here, most of the attackers that are targeting Philippine targets are mostly also local. So since, for example, we have our own language, right? So sometimes they use it in the Filipino language in the SMS. However, in the email, they usually use English, and they try to lure you into, maybe you thought it's your banking website, and they send you a fake email to get your personal information. So most of them are really financially motivated, and also quite localized. So because they know better, like the attacker came from here, so they know how the local banks or local organization system works. So with regards to maybe outside the country, there are still there. However, we don't see that as a large proportion of the attacks.
Okay. Thank you, Fredric. Let's move on. Madeline, your ideas. In particular, maybe how is the situation now in reference to the cybercrime organizations being affecting us within the Philippines, maybe, and also in our neighboring countries, maybe in areas like Singapore, and others.
Okay, so if you look at the ASEAN region, and if you look at the security of cyber security, rules and regulation, I would say, again, it depends on various regions. I would say Singapore is very, very strong. But if you look at regions like Malaysia, if you look at the regions like Indonesia and Vietnam, it is something that, it's growing, the government is acknowledging it. They are actually enforcing, like, for example, in Philippine government is actually enforcing the Data Privacy Act, right? So again, it depends on various regions, but I think for the past 1 year, since everybody is moving towards working from home, you see the trend of the data breaches and ransomware just increased. Like, in May 2020, one of the e-commerce platform in Indonesia, they had 91 million users' information that has been leaked. If you look at, September 2020, hospitals and businesses, in Thailand has been targeted and losing lots of money because of ransomware. So I think this is happening all over, and it very much dependent on the security that's being enforced. And it's going to do so until something is done. So I think for year 2020, it's a wake-up call for a lot of business entities, consumers and enterprise working towards investing and securing their cyberspace, right? You are looking at, people working from home. So you are looking at digital signing. You are looking at, huge potential financial losses. So how people are going to secure their platform by having data being encrypted. You're looking at data encryption tools. You're looking at tokenization tools. So I think in summary, if you look at, again, how it impacts the region, it very much depends on what is the law enforcement by the government. And to sum it all, I would say in summary, Philippines, it's getting there because, the government is enforcing Data Privacy Act, so which is good compared to the rest of the region.
Wow, thank you. And I like the idea. You mentioned that the enforcement of the Data Privacy Act actually is something that would force everyone to really comply with the security standards, right?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. And with that compliance, consumers and business entities are forced to make sure that they protect the data of the Philippine citizens.
Okay, thank you once again, Madeline. Jericho, can you just give me some ideas of what it is that's happening right now from your exposure with the local clients?
Okay. So maybe let's start. Let's say this is the state of, especially for the Philippines alone. According to Cybersecurity Philippines, last year alone, we experienced 435 assets and infrastructures were successfully compromised last year. 435. So that's basically 2 assets or 2 infrastructures were compromised every day last year.
Wow.
And I think that number really signifies the presence of this organized cybercrime. Unless it shows their efficiency, it shows their what they're doing is, I like Alvin always saying, they are, or Fredric, they are financially motivated. As long as they are financially motivated, they will always find that hole. They always find that missing piece that to for our security. So since it's like our this cyber criminals, they have their own KPI. They have their own KPI that this I need to set this this is my standard, or this is I have to meet this number of attacks per year for me to make living. So,
Oh,
and I think that's the current status that we have, and that's why it's equally important that to be always vigilant and to be aware that uh to be there's the attackers are just waiting for us to fail. And the problem with that is we need only to fail once.
yes.
We only need to fail once, and that's what that it really creates that the paranoia of whether it's you're just doing a normal transaction.
Okay. So, thank you very much, Jericho. That's starting to scare me as well when you use the term when you know in a way describe the need for that each one of those attackers have in terms of their own quotas for the year. That's the scary part. Anyway, thank you once again, Jericho. Jennifer, can you please give us your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, actually, if you we will based on the reports of how which country has the highest cyber uh, security incidents, that would be United States of America, or could be which country has is the least cyber secure among all other countries out there. So that's Tajikistan. So where do we stand? The worst. Is it good news? Of course not, right? I mean, Philippines is actually not the worst, like in terms of its standing versus the neighboring countries, or probably as compared to other countries there is globally. But well, actually, Alvin raised a very good point there when he said that it's actually not about the rank, but it's about actually the risk appetite, like for example, or probably how are we prepared for such kind of cybersecurity crimes. And I also agree with the point of Madeline that saying about the how the country would impose, in enforcement law in terms of the cybersecurity standards, that we have to comply. And well, in fact, now in the Philippines, we have a penalty for those who would not comply, which is about imprisonment of 6 to 12 years, or probably just a fine of what? How much? 200,000 pesos, right?
Mhm.
So it's not as strict as we think it is, right? Although the effect of a person committing the crime is definitely much more than that, as compared to the fine that a person has to pay when caught. But well, again, even Philippines, even if we're not the highest, or probably not the least secure country there is, well, actually, in the latest report of Statista, it says there that Philippines has the highest ratio or rank as when we speak about the fraudulent SMS or text scams. Okay, so Philippines is still on the process of adapting to cloud, making the architecture secure and adapting to new technology, especially now that we have to think outside the box because of the pandemic that has happened to us instantly.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jennifer. At least you've given me a clear picture of more or less how we stand as compared to the rest of the world. Well, much as I don't want to compare ourselves to the US, I mean, we're really way down there compared to them. So at this point, finally, just want to ask everyone, uh, what can you suggest, especially for the people at home, for not just our clients, not just your clients, not just the corporation, not just the companies, but what can you suggest for the people who are really spending most of their times at home in order to protect themselves against corporate crime? Maybe we can just shorten it a bit, maybe a short 1 minute statement that would allow us to, so that by virtue of our lack of time at this point, maybe something like just a tip as to how we can protect ourselves. I'd like to start off with Jennifer, please.
Right. No, let me just, I know we don't have so much time, but let me speak to answer that on a corporate level, on a personal note, no? And how do we deal with such kind of cybersecurity threats? No, like what we always say, no, an effective cybersecurity posture is based on a zero trust approach, right? Which requires seeing all traffic across the network, wherever it sits, like could it virtual in the cloud, no? And I'm pertaining to visibility as to not just a portion, but the entirety, no? And actually in Gigamon, we believe that a stronger security starts with visibility, no? And with Gigamon, we actually say that you should have visibility in your environment through a single pane of glass, no? And this is crucial given that we cannot protect what we cannot see. And now that we have, for example, a pervasive visibility, once inside the network, as like what I'm telling earlier, there's a dichotomy, right, of attacker versus defender, no? However, actually, we can take advantage of that if we think like an attacker, no? And if we have the visibility and we are prepared of the things that might be beneficial to us when the attacker hits us, then actually you have now changed the game suddenly. No, you have made that game easy, harder for them, which is like what I said before. Like we have to think and act strategically, no, not tactically, and we have to engineer our networks to have the full visibility, and always think an attacker. And on a personal note, no, like what I always teach my children, and they're so much exposed to a lot of cyber crimes on TikTok, on Facebook, etc. Right? I like adapting that zero trust. I always tell them, never trust, always verify with mommy, right? So that there's always guidance, no? Because kids could be also one potential blind spot in your home. So, well, I think we cannot change everything in just snap of a finger, no? I mean, this is a continuous battle, but I believe that having the visibility and having the preparedness, no, to act to it is something that I think I can share to everyone who's watching right now. Thank you, Sir Chito.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Madeline?
Yeah, I think from two perspectives, I think from a personal point of view, always be very, very, very vigilant when you are, doing your banking, follow, the proper SOPs, make sure that you follow the proper steps, be very vigilant, be very careful, when you are like WhatsApp, they give you a double security, two-factor authentication. So use that, as another level of security to protect your data. I think from an organization point of view, I think, you got to secure your data, right? You're not talking, this is beyond firewall, right? So just a simple analogy, right? When you want to go out and when you lock your home, you don't hang your key beside the door, because then you are attracting people, you're attracting the thief to actually take your keys and open the door and steal your stuff. So it's a very simple analogy, because at the end of the day, you need to protect your keys, you need to protect your data. So look at ways into securing these keys, protecting your customers' data, because I think, investing on such securities would actually, at the end of the day, protect your organization from huge losses as a result of cybercrime.
Well, very well said. Thank you, Madeline. Alvin, I'm sorry. Alvin, can you give your thoughts at this time?
Yeah, thanks. So I think earlier on I shared that, during economic hardship, cybercrime shoots through the roof. So it seems like it's quite bleak, right? But I would say that things haven't really changed because your assets have not really changed. So in cybersecurity, we always say, look inwards to see what you need to protect and protect what you can protect, right? It's inwards, actually, it's not outwards. The crime can be happening everywhere else, but if it's not hitting you, you shouldn't need to worry about it. So with that, and to keep this short, I would say that the biggest thing that I see that you can do to help yourself is to really, really nail down the cyber hygiene. So I had some customers tell me that, when people go home, the cyber hygiene just broke. They can't scan vulnerability anymore because the endpoints are all at home. So there's a need to change posture slightly. Instead of using network-based scanners, you need to start thinking about what can the endpoint do for itself. I liken that to a lot to COVID actually, in fact, that, in lockdown, it is actually zero trust. But now that countries are starting to open, when vaccination rates go up, countries are starting to open, you actually need to take care of your own health. Take more vitamin C, drink more water, exercise, get more sunlight. So those are things that you can do because it is yourself, and you can look inwards and say, hey, how do I raise that bar on cyber hygiene? And do it with certainty. Don't just do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Alvin. Jericho?
Maybe for me, I always say that the attackers are really economically driven. We need that. We need to attack the economics in terms of economics, because every defense will always fail if the value is really high. If I succeed, in getting this money, it always translate to in terms of economics. So and for a personal standpoint, I think we cannot choose who can attack us, but we can choose who can we trust our data. Like for example, for our financial or for our finances, we cannot choose who can attack us, but we can trust this financial institution that are practicing good standard in terms of in terms of the security. So it's not enough to be to this like victim mindset that, sorry, I don't know that we are this is not good practice. But I think everyone, I'm really advocate of education for cybersecurity, that everyone should be aware what's the standards. And you cannot say that, sorry, I do not know. The ignorance right now is not acceptable, especially how we transact our everyday life. We are highly dependent on our applications. So, and yeah, that's for me. So we need to really look deeply even if we don't see any problem.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Jericho. Thank you. Last but not least, Fredric,
Thank you.
what can you share for us?
Yes,
on how
Chito.
to
For
deal
me,
with
I think in terms of best practices, that's the key important know-how that everyone should have. I believe cybersecurity should be in the education curriculum because
Yeah.
this is important, especially nowadays. So even the kids, no, adults, they need to know all of these things, all of these threats, and know how to avoid them. This is just like protecting yourself, but in the cyber domain. So in the personal level, I think it's very important to always be skeptical before giving out any personal information. Always have the thought that this person might be a threat. So it's not paranoid, but it's important for us to always check whether this is legitimate. For example, if you receive a call or you receive an email, always verify. Don't, if you're in doubt, probably there's a reason. If you're not expecting a call or a particular email and it is trying to pressure you to give you information, sometimes it gives you in a situation where you have to provide the information in this amount of time. So those are questionable things. And for example, your bank wouldn't call you and ask for your credit card number. That definitely is a red flag. So be aware of those kind of tactics that the cyber attacker will do. So in an enterprise or organization level, however, it is imperative that the defenses are there, like in the network level, the endpoint level, even the cloud level. So organizations should have those systems in place to protect their infrastructure and also their employees and proprietary or company information, since this is very important in their image and in their business as well. So yeah, that's just my thoughts, and thank you, Chito, for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much, Fredric. And I'd like to extend my thanks to everyone, Fredric, Jennifer, Jericho, Alvin, and Madeline. Thank you for spending the time with me today. At this point, I'd like to turn over our session and end the session and move on to our team, to our organizers at this point. Thank you once again, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.